You thought I was done, but I'm back with another tutorial. All right, first things first, we're going to need a source image for Penn Badgley. I went to Midjourney for this, and I went through a few different iterations of photos based off of his photo, and I came up with an image like this. Now, this isn't a perfect replica of Penn, but it's going to look really well for the pose that he had in his Netflix key art. Next, we're going to bring in this bookshelf image, and that's what's going to be in the background right here behind Penn's ear. So let's bring in the lookalike, then we're going to use AI to remove the background. Once that's removed, we're just going to scale him up just a little bit so that he's a little bit farther up and there's room for the title and everything else. Now let's go ahead and hit Command T on your keyboard, and then we're just going to flip this to the opposite side. So we're going to use flip horizontal, and then we're just going to add a Gaussian blur, and that's just going to push that background down just a little bit more. And then we're going to go in here to the layer styles, and we're going to add a few different gradient overlays. And what this is going to do is it's going to give it a little bit more of a lighting effect behind him. Next, I want to add a solid color. So I'm going to go down here to the bottom, hit solid color. And we're going to do this kind of hazy orange type of color. Then we're going to pull that behind him and use it as more of like a filter. Now let's add a level to it. And this is just going to add a little bit more of that haze and give it a bit of a more muted look. Once that's done, let's go down to the bottom. I'm going to add in a new layer, and then I'm going to use the brush tool. And what I'm going to do here is add in a bit of lighting. So you can do lighting using a solid color or even a gradient. Just depends on how you want to do it. For me, I like using brushes because I have the most control over them. And then we're going to add some hue and saturation on Penn's face because that's just going to make the whole composition look like it's already native. Next up, we're going to double click this, go into the layer styles and click gradient overlay. This one's going to go on top of the subject to make it look like the universal lighting from the other image. After that, I noticed that the shirt was blue in the original photo. So what we're going to do is change this with AI. So let's use this lasso tool, and then we're going to go over the subject shirt. And once we have that selected, let's type in blue dress shirt and see what we get. All right, so I got a few good options here. This one's a little too dressy. The first one's a little too blue. So we're going to use this middle one, and I think that'll be a go. Next up, we're going to add in these newspaper type clippings. Now I use some of the texture packs from my website, but you don't have to. You can use whatever you want. And I pretty much made fake newspaper clippings to go onto those papers. And then I added those around the image. Okay, so we got that done. And now it's starting to look a little bit more like the original image. Let's move on to this next step right here. So let's go down here to the bottom, and we're going to add a gradient. And what that's going to do is allow the title to pop out a little bit more, and it looks exactly like the original image. So we're going to add in this bit of gradient. We'll change this color right here. We'll actually leave the other color exactly how it is, and we'll hit OK. Now on that gradient fill layer, we're just going to click here in this white box, and I'm going to just remove some of the gradient from his face because it's going to start to give him a bit more dark and muted look, and I don't want that from the gradient. I want to do that myself. Next up, we're going to add shadows to each of these newspapers. Again, I'll speed through this, but we're just going to go in here to the layer style, and we're going to add a drop shadow. Now that we've done that, we're going to group that, and then we're going to go to curves because we want this to look a little bit more like that muted green look, just like the original photo. So let's do a little bit of adjustments here. And as you see, it's starting to look a lot closer to the original image. Let's move on to the next step. Now we're going to go over here to the left-hand side. We're going to use this dodge and burn, and we're just pretty much going to add a little bit more grunge to his face to kind of give him a more, I guess you can call, sinister look. After that, we're going to use the same tool, but we're going to just change the eyes a little bit. So we're going to make those darker because that's how Penn's were, but you'll see how much of a difference this actually adds to this photo. And just like that, we have an image that went from this to this. Next up, let's go over here to pixels, and we're just going to get a yellow cab. So let me type that in. We'll scroll down here and we'll grab this image. And then we'll also go back in and we'll do building windows. And this will be for this section right here. And let's use this image right here, and we'll bring those into Photoshop. Before we bring those in, I'm going to just go ahead and do some scribbles, add some scribbles here. It's pretty much the same as they did on this original image. And I'm just going to kind of highlight some of these red letters. Now let's bring in the yellow cab, and then we're going to add a motion blur to it. So we'll kind of leave it right here around 65. Then we're going to bring that down. And then we'll just scroll through the blending options until we find something good. So I'm going to leave it here on lighten, and then I'm just going to brush away on the mask so that it's only in a certain spot. Next, we'll bring in this window image, which I end up going with this one. And we're just going to make this really subtle. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to change the blending mode, and then we're going to paint around it so that it's kind of a subtle hint there. As you see, this is already starting to look like the official cover of You, and we've only done a few different edits. The last one here is going to be adding in just a bit of glare. So you can do this a whole bunch of different ways. I know you can use either solid color, or you can do different things with motion blur and stuff like that. I'm just going to use the paintbrush because it's simple and it's efficient. So just like that, in less than 10 minutes, you have an image that went from this to this. And I say that's pretty close to the official Netflix You design. And that's all I got for you today with the YouTube tutorials. I'll see you next time.